You guys, welcome back to So Bad It's Good, presented by Betches Media. Today we have a returning guest. It's been years, though, since she's been on, and she has been insanely busy. This is going to be a great conversation because not only do we get to talk about her new podcast, which is highly bingeable and something that you guys will totally dig, but we'll get into all the pop culture of it because she loves the shows that we love. And by the way, her new podcast, Bad Influencer, you can see how much she appreciates the lifestyle that we represent every day. I got to tell you about this new podcast. I am starting to feel like the Huffington Post of good podcasts, of things that you guys need to check. I'm an aggregator at this point, which I'm completely happy with. But this podcast, there's 9 episodes. All 9 episodes are out right now. They're bite size. And they're like, the longest episode is 20 minutes, you guys. You can binge this all at once. You can kind of continue it throughout your day or through your week, but it tells an actual story. This is what I love. I love when podcasting does something a little different, where it's actually telling a story, where there's this, it's almost like a movie. You know, there's voice actors, there's production, there's sound effects, and it takes you through kind of a serialized story. Now, this is the log line for this, you guys. A wannabe nobody makes a wish and wakes up a famous influencer only to find herself caught in non-stop scandals. Featuring Demois, Kristen Doty, Perez Hilton, and Christy Carlson Romano, Bad Influencer is a romantic comedy for your ears set in the current New York City influencer world, which is where I'm at right now, folks. I'm in New York City. Now, the creator of this is also an author. We've talked about her book before, 20 Guys You Date in Your 20s, that came out in 2020. And since that book, she is now happily married. So much is going on. But ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the show, Gabi Conti. Gabi, welcome.
Thank you so much, Ryan. What an intro. I am so happy to be here.
I'm kind of blown away by this podcast in the sense that it is doing something a little different. And I also want to point out, congratulations, it hit #1 on Apple Podcasts. And I mean, I think that's just insanely incredible. I mean, it must be so nice when you put so much work into something to see success.
Yeah, well, hit #1 in fiction, which was a huge, like, just that title was a massive, like, honor for me because I've been writing nonfiction for so long, aspiring to do, I wrote a couple of screenplays and pilots throughout my career. And so to have this thing that got produced be fiction, and then for people to recognize it as the #1 fiction podcast was a huge accomplishment, but also no surprise because I co-created it with 18 New York Times bestselling author Jane Green, who is an amazing fiction author. And basically I learned everything I needed to know about fiction writing working with her on this, which was such a dream.
Well, you mentioned something that I always think about these days is like starting off as an actor in Hollywood and then kind of pivoting in certain ways, using the same strengths. You talk about writing pilots and movies and all of this stuff. You couldn't have imagined of like, well, maybe I could put those same skills and that same muscle and actually learn a lot, but I could do it through podcasting. Where did that idea even come to pivot to telling a story through a podcast?
Well, it came from the opportunity. So a Bad Influencer is not the first type of podcast like this. There's this also amazing network called Rom-Com Pods that does this like chef's kiss perfectly. But it is there's not as much content of this out there when you look at the whole podcast marketplace. So the opportunity was actually presented to me. I met Jane at my best friend's wedding and she had just binged my
That's a rom-com right there. You're at my best friend's wedding? And then we were sleepless in Seattle with each other. Yeah.
Exactly. And there was also a wedding singer. But yeah, so I met Jane at my best friend's wedding. She had just coincidentally had just binged my other podcast, Am I Dating a Serial Killer? And was a big fan. And that's not a fiction podcast. That's a true crime, true dating podcast where people tell me they're like crazy, insane dating stories. And we have a licensed expert. Sometimes they work for the FBI, weigh in on how dangerous that relationship was and give listeners tips on how to survive the really crazy, scary dating world that we all live in. And Jane was a big fan of it. And she had just started Emerald Audio, a female-driven, female-run storytelling network. And she was looking to acquire more projects. And she had just started with her project called Rainbow Girl, which is in a similar like vibe as Bad Influencer, which was the sequel to the book that she had just released called Sister Stardust. So she started the network with that. And we just got to talking. And she had this idea about Bad Influencer. And this was like one of those moments in life where it's like I had done all the preparation for this opportunity unbeknownst to me,
Yeah.
because she like didn't really know the influencer world as well. And from working for Hollywire for the past 3 years and covering influencer and celebrity tea, I was so tapped into it, and had actually even written a pilot about it called Saddle Ranch, which I wrote.
Which, by the way, is the epicenter of influencer culture in Los Angeles. Yeah.
And I wrote that during the pandemic, and it was where all these celebrities were going, and more influencers. All these influencers were going to Saddle Ranch every day. And so I kind of like, and I sent that to her. And also I had adapted my book, 20 Guys You Date in Your 20s, into a movie. So I had also had that screenplay. So it was really like, I was so prepared for this opportunity. And we just got to talking, and Jane had the idea of like, it's like 13 going on 30 meets big. It's this girl who wants to be a famous influencer, but she doesn't know how to do it. She becomes it. And then I was like, oh, I know exactly where we go from here. And so there's a lot of familiar plot lines, like, the love triangle with the best friend, which I wrote pre-Sandoval, which is like, which is
great that you got Doty in there. It's great that Kristen Doty, a voice actor, amazing choice.
Yeah, so that's kind of how, in terms of how the story came together. And then there was the thing that, when you listen to it, like, Kristen isn't the star. She's like they're all featured, which we were so grateful for, because it also kind of tapped into the marketing of it, where we wanted, you call a show about influencer, we wanted to have real influencers in it. And so I kind of looked into who I was connected with, who I knew, who I had relationships with. And I was so, so grateful that Kristen and Dumois and Perez and Christy were also willing to lend their voices and have such great sense of humors about themselves, and kind of almost like make fun of themselves in a way as they played themselves.
Well, I also think it's great, Dumois and Perez, to have those two. It's very interesting because Perez was where a lot of us started in terms of online celebrity gossip. And it is kind of, I don't know if blossom is the word, but it is supercharged to where we're at with Dumois. And I think that is very interesting to be able to have those two bookends in this show, which is just kind of cool from a pop culture lover standpoint, to have both of those voices in this. I mean, where do you think, in terms of like celebrity pop culture, how it's changed? And even like, we're fans of this stuff, but we cover this stuff as well. What are the big changes? And I know this doesn't necessarily have to do with Bad Influencer, but where have you seen this kind of changing in the last like 20 years? And where do you see it headed?
Yeah. So, well, we do kind of touch on this in the show, but also just from like an entertainment reporter standpoint. And I've been covering entertainment news since college. And it is insane to me how so much of celebrity news when we were growing up was paparazzi. Like, that was all the access we really had. It was paparazzi, and then it was blogs, right? And now so much of celebrity news is being driven by celebrities themselves because of social media. And so oftentimes stories are breaking on TikTok or Instagram before the outlets can even cover it. So if you are like me and like you, I'm assuming, Ryan, you follow all of these random celebrities that you talk about, the tea before the big outlets themselves. But then we have this other level, which I think we still had when we were growing up. And I think we saw this in the form more of like a page 6 and more of the blind items, and also what early Perez was doing. And those are the tea pages. Now, Dumois to me feels kind of like a tea page. You could best, you describe Dumois as a celebrity gossip Instagram account, which is kind of like a page 6. But these tea pages are also really quick too, because especially with like Gen Z influencer TikToker culture, they are the ones that are watching when friends unfollow each other or block each other or post something. They get the screen recordings that they delete. Like they are on this stuff. So it's all there. And I think we're going to probably see more of that, I think, as social media grows. But I think what we have started to see since the beginning of social media is celebrities are a little bit more savvy about how they use social media, because they know that anything they post is going to be screen recorded and screenshotted, which is why it's more interesting to follow the younger celebrities who haven't figured that out yet.
No, I mean, it really, it's, I keep using like on steroids as a way to describe things, but it seems like pop culture, we're at it on steroids because like when I grew up, you had the Entertainment Tonight's, the, Access Hollywoods and, even maybe E! News Tonight. And now it has just exploded into our hands. Second screen technology, we can move so quick. Dumois can spot you down a street, or somebody can put in a blind item, or like you said, these TikToks, it's like a little, like a slew of Watergate detectives breaking down every every move that, I couldn't have dreamed about this as a kid. Like, I loved this, but I couldn't, to get where we're at today, but also then to what your show deals with is the aspirational, element of this, of wanting to be these people, of wanting to live these lives. And I think that's the interesting point is sometimes, and I know you're a fan of the Kardashians and you watch the show, I sometimes argue with myself, is this aspirational anymore? Because it seems like such an albatross around their necks sometimes, as amazing as the money and the clothes and all this stuff is, there seems like, God, there's like a deep recess of pain here. Why are we, is celebrity culture still aspirational? Why does this character want to be, like that's the stuff I question now.
Yeah, I hear that too, and especially looking back at like Kim and Courtney's like very public feud, like, and it seems like Courtney is like trying to take a step back. Also, the pressure of like she is about to give birth. Like, I can't imagine being about to give birth and, like you were saying on your last podcast, having to worry about a birthday Instagram post so the public doesn't think you're still fighting with your sister.
And was it loving enough? Was the post?
Right.
I mean, it was like I was just like, does Kris Jenner have to negotiate the birthday stories and posts and stuff like that?
Someone is, someone is, but yeah, I don't know, when you're watching the Kardashians, like, yes, sure, the money is aspirational, but it's also at a point where you kind of understand why like Rob isn't involved anymore, because it's so in your face and it's so there. And I feel like they don't ever get to like catch a break. They never get to just like be on their own. And it's probably a big reason why like Kim's is having such a hard time dating, or if she is dating someone, she's doing it privately, which I really think she is, because of how her relationship with Pete was so not only so public, but also it got so messy with her divorce with Kanye, and Kanye was such a jerk about it. Like, if I was Kim, I totally get it. And I understand why celebrities want to try to date privately when they can, which I think is why so much of the public, anytime we see a celebrity dating so publicly, like a Taylor and Travis, we're so quick to question it, because we're like, well, is it authentic? Why are they shoving it in our faces?
Oh, I mean, we question the reality of everything these days. And even like, it's funny that Pete was who Kim picked for a starter boyfriend after Kanye. I mean, what a starter boyfriend. And now it's like, okay, that Band-Aid's off. So the Kanye of it all, particularly can maybe go by the wayside. But then I was just thinking, we got pushed paparazzi photos last week of Bradley Cooper and Gigi Hadid, right?
Yes,
and
there were some recent ones of them. Yeah,
they're walking in the rain. He's wearing his Ellen DeGeneres underwear, and we're seeing them pop up. And I'm like, is this like soft launching in terms of like putting a couple pictures out there to kind of test the waters? And then on the other hand, you have Irina Shayk, which is Bradley's ex. They have a kid together. They had I don't know, it wasn't a press release, but they said, her and Tom Brady, it's cooled off. It's not happening anymore. And I was like, well, how kind of that is that Bradley Cooper waited until that cooled off so he could get into the news with Gigi with the Ellen underwear. And I just find it so, that's the fascinating part of celebrity pop culture now, is that we're on it immediately and we can influence the rise and fall of these relationships so much quicker.
Yeah, and I bet you that the public opinion on relationships kind of like decides whether or not if the couple wants to stay together, if it is kind of like somewhat PR. And it seems like people were kind of on board for Bradley and Gigi, or they were happy to see Gigi. Like, I think people were happy to see Gigi not with Leo. Like, I think people were just like pleased that was like over. And also, like, when you look at her dating relationships, like, you have Zayn, who's like, has his own issues. Then you have Leo, and now you have Bradley, and you're like, oh, that's nice, like, good for them. But then did you also hear the whole thing about Irina, like, setting them up, but also wanting Bradley back? I mean, just a couple of months ago, her and Bradley looked like they were on a vacation in Italy.
Yeah,
like
a
I don't
vacation,
know.
yeah.
And now that her and Tom are like over, something tells me that I wouldn't be surprised if you see Irina and Bradley together like next month or next week.
But you can date in secret. You can keep things private if you want to. It's just that's when we question the reality of a certain situation, because you can keep it private. These people sometimes do want to be public. Sorry to go back to the show really quick.
Oh, no.
Bad Influencer, the podcast.
I was trying to promote. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, so sorry, you guys. I got to talk. No. What I was impressed by, and this is kind of a geek thing, is just the sound design on this thing. I mean, you got the sounds in New York. You've got all of this. I mean, it really does put you in there. So if you close your eyes, you guys, which I like to do, you can picture this. This is filmic. This is you can hear the sounds of the street. You can hear them walking and talking. How do you even go about once you've captured these voice performances, which I want to talk about in a second? How do you go about then piecing this together of, and how on hands were you with all of that?
Yeah, so very hands-on from the writing.
Yeah, hands-on, not on hands, you guys. Sorry, my dyslexia comes out in my actual vocal speech.
It's okay. I'm also dyslexic, so I totally understood what you were saying. But no, it was very hands-on from the writing and how I was writing the script to then being involved in sessions to then being very involved to post-production. We had an incredible team that put this all together and was our engineer and the sound designer of it. But so much of me writing the script was writing in a way where it was very clear what the sound effects were and when they were coming up. So when you're writing for audio, similar to like writing for television and film, you replace all of your action lines with sound effects. So anytime and we didn't have a narrator for this, which a lot of these types of podcasts do. They have a narrator or they have an inner monologue, and we didn't have that. So I had to be like extra careful that anytime I was setting up a scene that we had those sound effects. So it was very clear of where it is and what was happening, also not only in the sound effects, but also in the dialogue. And then, so when we went to go record it, we had this amazing, talented cast of actors that completely crushed it. And so I was there in the sessions making sure that the lines were being said in the way that I intended them for the sake of the story.
Yeah, how do you direct voice acting? Is it the same as, on camera? Like, how do you direct a very specific a vocal? That's all we get to hear. How do you go about trying to even get those performances?
So you're listening more for pronunciation and clarity, but also for the emotion behind the line and to make sure that the way they're saying the line is the emotion, is the like motive that you're trying to get across, and that they're saying it with that way. But in a lot of ways, I'm putting that into the actual dialogue. But sometimes, if a line is like sarcastic, or if, you just want to make sure that they're hitting it right. And I wasn't the official director, but I think possibly on the next project I will be directing, because I got to kind of like flex that muscle back from like theater days of directing. And so a lot of it is like, you never want to give a line read, right? Like every actor hates that, but it's kind of like giving them the direction of, okay, like let's say this line like you are saying, X, Y, and Z, or like or this is the motive, this is what you're trying to get across by saying this line. But I mean, a lot of the actors they came into the session with such strong understanding of their character, of their motive, of what was going on. Like they clearly did their homework, they read the script. So in terms of doing that, I mean, those places were few and far between. But then also when it came to the post, there was a lot of the editing, not on the actors' lines, but sometimes on the sound effects, on like not having the right sound that you needed and like giving the note on that, or making sure we didn't have like a car passing over an actor's line. And this is actually kind of funny. In the scene with Kristen, it takes place in a bathroom. And there was a sound effect of running water throughout the entire scene. And when I was listening to it back, I'm like, we gotta cut that. It sounds like the two of them are at urinals, like peeing.
Kristen's weak pelvic flooring you heard throughout the entire scene. Yeah,
she doesn't know that that's like. But I was like, we have to remove that. So thankfully, we removed that, and now I think it makes a lot more sense.
I mean, who most surprised you with their vocal performance?
Perez is like, he is like, we forget that he is also an actor, and the way
he was on an episode of The Sopranos way back in the day. Yeah.
Yes. And he did such a good job we initially only had him play himself as like him saying the news and saying the story and the tea. And then we were looking for an influencer to be the one to kind of spill the tea about what's going on with these like two main characters' relationships. And we were out to some like other influencers and we couldn't get it to work. And we'd already cast Perez for that line. I was like, oh my God, wait, Perez would totally know in this world. Like, how funny to have Perez at this influencer event that's meant to be a OC influencer event. And then also we get to like throw his like whole like feud with Misha Barton in there and like reference it. And it was funny because writing that scene for him, I was actually texting him as I was writing it. And when I told him, I was like, oh yeah, so you're going to be at like an OC event. And he was like, Real Housewives of Orange County. And I was like, oh, perfect, amazing. Like, so that just went, he basically wrote his lines in a way.
That's what I love about us pop culture lovers is that we all have a shorthand. We all know the kind of same building blocks that we all have. Like, I love that kind of give and take in terms of like the pop culture of it all. And there's tons of tip of the hat to all of that. And that's what's going to kind of keep you guys in this, even though there is a through line story here. But that's what I love. I love celebrating things that celebrate the stuff we love, but does it in a different genre or form. And I think fiction storytelling with the podcast, like, how do you get cooler than that? And that's why you've got to support this. Once again, reminder, go subscribe to this podcast, Bad Influencer. And before you do anything, what do we always tell people that listen to this show that come on? Rate it 5 stars before you even listen to it. If you're taking the time, it does something. It really does help this thing, because all 9 episodes were released for your consumption. But we don't want it to be like certain Netflix shows where you talk about it one weekend and then it's just completely forgotten about. Like Love is Blind. I was so into that, and now I've forgotten about it completely. Turns out it was just last week. I thought it was like a month ago. It was just last week, season 5. So we want this to keep going, because my thought was, where do we go in season 2 with this?
Yeah, so season 2, I really want to set it in Los Angeles. And kind of White Lotus it. So take some of the characters that we've already established in season 1, but bring in a whole new cast of characters and new influencers. And maybe you, Ryan, you could play yourself. We could have
come on. Where the hell was my audition? I could be a barista. I could be like, hey, do you want cream on your coffee? Like, I mean, come on.
We could have one of the influencers go on your podcast.
Please, this is what I'm talking about. Like, this is the kind of work I need, folks. I was thinking about that while I was listening. I was like, what? Where was old Ryan Bailey in this? You got Christy Carlson Romano. Come on.
I seriously did think of you. I'm not kidding. But when we got, if Dumois didn't do it, I think I would have had you do it as the podcast.
Oh my God, Dumois! God, I love Dumois. I love Dumois. I love Perez. Like, it is interesting to even see the trouble that they get themselves into sometimes, because they are commenting all. It is what a tangled web pop culture weaves. So season 2, that is a possibility. We just need to make sure we keep listening to this to get it. But I feel like this is a no-brainer.
Yeah. It seems like we definitely have the audience there. So yeah, if the more support we can get, the more reviews. We have a lot of people that are mad that there's ads on the podcast. That's how you make a podcast. I hate to break it to you. And obviously, I let every influencer that came on do a little plug of what they're promoting, much like they would do if they went on an interview style podcast.
Also the company that you that actually I think represents it, it's like a dating site. Like an online, what is that called?
So First Rounds on Me. We were actually really lucky for this, because we were having a hard time launching the show, because we were having a hard time getting sponsors. There was also a time in the podcast market where it was just like no one was being sponsored, especially for a newer network like Emerald Audio. And so I had this idea that we should be reaching out to a company that isn't in the podcast space, is not an advertiser. And I had worked with First Rounds on Me for all the writing I do for Dating, for Cosmo, and for Giddy. And I knew the founder. And so I pitched this to them. I said, are you interested in this? And they were. And it was such a perfect match for it, because we ended up having a scene already written that was basically dragging dating apps. And
Gabi, that's what I thought. I thought almost that they created this show because I thought it fit so well. And that's what I was like, oh, did this company go, hey, do this? And that's fascinating.
Yeah, so the show was already there. We already had the space for them, and then we pitched it to them as like, okay, so you can be our sponsor. We'll say it's presented by you. We'll put an ad for the podcast, and we'll put an ad for your dating app, which I'm married now, so I'm not on dating apps, but I got to play around with it, and I got to like hear about it, and I really do feel that they are revolutionizing dating, because
you plan your first date on the app. And by the way, she didn't tell me to say any of this. I was just listening to the show, and I was listening to the ad, and I was like, I was trying to see why it was different. And it was like, you plan your first date.
Right. And when I went on my 30 dates in 3 days, I was
Did we lose you?
Oh, hi. Can you hear me?
Oh.
No?
Okay, Gab, sorry. You froze up real quick. Okay, there you are. I was listening to it. I was like, oh, this is cool.
Yeah, and when I went on my 30 dates in 3 days, I was using dating apps the way First Rounds on Me is designed, which is the whole thing of meeting in person as soon as possible. And I believe that that's what led me to my husband, which is why I was such a firm believer in this app. And it was just like the perfect situation that we had. We already had the content that was perfect for them. And I'm so happy that they were willing to come on board. And I hope that people have downloaded the app since listening, and maybe people have gotten some great dates since listening.
I hope people have gotten married since last month. I hope people have done that. What did you say? Even I was listening. What is it like? Perfect date should be like 30 minutes or something.
An hour, which is one round of drinks, which is exactly all you commit when you go on First Rounds on Me. It's just one round. You're not committing to more than that.
I mean, that's so much pressure, though. You see that the time ticking by, you're getting close to the hour. You're like, is this going good or not? Which, by the way, I do recommend her book as well. Like, it was really a wild take of like a social experiment that actually turned out working great for you in the long run. I mean, you are married, but it is that is, I think, a movie waiting to happen. My gosh.
Well, let's hope so. I mean, I have the script, so we're hopefully going to be able to make that sometime soon.
Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about other pop culture things,
Sure.
the stuff that Bad Influencer, the stuff that she loves, that we all love, and you love these shows that we all love, Housewives, Kardashians. What are you currently watching out there?
Okay, so I have never watched Real Housewives like in its entire like I've never watched a full like season of Real Housewives before. The
Is
first
that, do you
season,
consider that self-care? What are you doing? What is?
no, I don't know. I guess maybe because like when everyone got into it, I was always more into like The Bachelor, and then later I got really into Vanderpump Rules, which was actually like after meeting Kristen, which is like a whole other funny thing. But I never really was like a Housewives person. And then actually I interviewed a Real Housewife of Toronto recently who wrote a book called Most Hated. Her name's Cara Alloway, and she was given the villain edit, and I got to watch that whole show to prepare to interview her for her book launch. And so after that, I was like, I love this. I'm into Housewives. And then when Real Housewives of New York came out, I was like, oh, it's a new chapter for me to start. I watched the whole first season, and I'm hooked, and I can't believe I'm the same age as them.
Wait, did you end up watching the reunion for Roni last
I
night?
haven't gone to watch the reunion yet, but I'm really looking forward to doing that.
By the way, you could get a housewife for season 2.
You want me to become a housewife?
No, put one in
Get
season
on the
2 of
show.
Bad
Oh,
Influencer.
yes, I should.
Get a housewife actor for
I
that. They would
should.
love
That
it.
would be amazing. I would love that so much. But I'm obsessed with them. I think they're so amazing, and so like I don't know. And this whole season, I thought, I don't know. I love New York. I was born in New York City, so I really like connected a lot to that. I lived in New York briefly, and I know you're living there now, right?
Well, I know I'm going back and forth, and it
Oh
is
my goodness.
wild because I am trying to get the lay of the land. It is wild. I'm finally getting like to know my way around certain areas, but I still don't know how it all pieces together. I'll just be like, okay, now I'm here, and I think I know these buildings around here, and now we're over here in a completely different area, but I don't really take the time to know how it all connects.
Yeah, it takes a while. When I was there, I was living in Brooklyn, but when I was born, we lived on the Upper West Side, and I lived in Connecticut growing up, so I was always like back and forth in the city, and I feel like I knew like Soho, like that area really well, but other than that, and like Midtown, but like other than that, I did not know where I was going. But no, I really loved this first season of Housewives, and I'm excited to see where the second season goes.
We got to get you on more of these housewife shows to watch because you are going to be blown away. Like New York was great, but it's like, I mean, it's very tame. Like we're fighting over like text messages and restaurants. But if you get to like a season of Jersey or even this season of Salt Lake, you are going to lose your mind potentially. It's not going to go well.
Well, yeah, so maybe it was like a good intro, but yeah, I felt like the only drama was about like not getting fed enough or like thinking that they're like not opening up to each other enough in New York. So yeah, maybe I do need to get more into like the drama.
What else are you watching?
Delicate, with Kim Kardashian.
Okay,
Ryan
okay, so
Murphy.
she's talking American Horror Story Delicate.
Yeah.
I was talking about this yesterday. What happened to this show? Is it still on?
It's still on. I'm watching. They keep making more episodes, but here's the thing. I think why people are confused about this is they're taking so long to get to the point. Like it's taking but every time Kim comes on, it's like such a treat. She's like playing Kris Jenner. She's so good. And it's like very dark, and it's also a little grotesque to watch, but you know, Emma Roberts is obviously fantastic. But I am so invested in it because I want to find, maybe I'm the only one still watching being like, what's going to happen? Like what is the big reveal, Ryan Murphy?
I feel like it just disappeared. Like I feel like I heard about it so much for 2 weeks. And that's like my biggest pet peeve with pop culture is the disposable nature of the things that we consume. Is that I want something to stand the test of time. And I know that's a tall order, but like that's why I love it's like you put out this podcast, Bad Influencer, and it's like I worked so hard on this. I want this to last. I want people to keep discovering this. And I think we are now in this culture of, here today, gone tomorrow, on to the next thing. And I want to sit with something. I want to be talking about something for at least a couple of months. Like that's how, when they did the serialized TV shows, which Delicate is, I sometimes miss that conversation where you are waiting week after week. And I think Housewives at least does that well. I just want that for more things in pop culture because we have so much coming at us, but I don't want to forget all of these great things.
I think the issue with Delicate is they should have made it more bingeable. Like they should have released like multiple episodes at once, and I think people would have been more into it. I think they're losing people by breaking it up like this. But I think that's an interesting now that things do come up all at once, right? We're so used to watching that when they do serialize a show, I think it's easier to forget about it and to forget that there's new episodes, unless the show is like really has you in a chokehold where you like need to know what's happening next, then you're going to keep tuning in.
Yeah, I mean, so Kim is doing good. Like it's a part that's like written. Like Kim can knock this out of the park. Like I said, she wasn't going to be bad in this because it is written very much like Kris Jenner. There's like a wink to it, and I think that's great. But are you watching the Kardashians this season, the reality show?
Oh yeah, I'm all Kimmed out. Like, I got her on Delicate, I have her on the Kardashians, and I've watched every episode of the Kardashians. And what's interesting to me about the Kardashians, I feel like we know more about them from what's in the headlines, and it's interesting to see when they have caught up to what we already know about them in the press and what they're focusing on and what they're not focusing on. It must be hard for them to continue to create storylines when so much of the storylines are already kind of leaked to the public.
Well, I mean, you just even said that earlier, just when in, TikTok or Demois, we can put it out immediately. And these people have to wait for months of production to actually get to the storytelling part of it. So we're already well ahead. I mean, it's interesting from another angle to see it, but sometimes we're like 10 steps ahead. And I'm like, well, what narrative are you trying to push us? That's why even this season, I get so kind of like, what are you guys doing with the Tristan story? What's going on? Like,
right. They really seem to be like protecting him a lot and defending him a lot, which I do understand given the circumstances and the horrible circumstances that happened to him and his family. So I understand why they're being so kind and supportive, but they keep like pushing on the whole, like the last episode where Chris was like, well, how would you feel if Tristan started dating someone else? And how would Tristan feel if you started dating someone else? Which I love how Chloe kind of claps back at her mom being like, hey mom, remember when you cheated?
Yeah.
A lot of people think is with Caitlyn Jenner, but it's not. There was another man that Kris cheated on Robert Kardashian with while she was married to Robert, which led to the divorce. I think we forget that that Kris and Robert got divorced when Kim and Chloe and Courtney and Robert were all pretty young, right?
Yeah. I mean, no, and also like Corey throwing his 2 cents in of like, I hope they can work it out, and I'm like, why are you, I know Tristan, we all have bad things that happen to us. I just don't understand the narrative that Kris pushes all the time of just because you have kids with these people that you need to stay with them. And I feel like Chloe, we are getting sold a bill of goods in a sense of Chloe's like, I'm not getting back together with him. And then the next episode, she'll be like, well, who's to say what's going to happen in 5 to 10 years? And then I feel like the next episode is going to be like, who knows what's going to happen in 2 years? And by the end of the season, this man's not going to move out of her house and they're going to be back together. I feel like this is almost a storyline.
Oh yeah, I feel like they already are back together. Also, do you remember how like we would keep on seeing Kim hanging out with Tristan? Like I think that was like a cover of like actually Chloe was also there, but they didn't want to show it. Like I think that Chloe and Tristan are back together, but I think she doesn't want the public to be so involved in her love life because of what happened in the past, and she doesn't want to look pathetic by like being back with him in a romantic sense after he had betrayed her so many times.
I just don't buy that this man's house has a faulty roof. I don't buy any of this. And the fact that Tristan's getting in there and like Kris is like, hey, I'm happy that I was able to make a call and get you on ESPN. This man has been rewarded for making her look like an idiot again and again. Like he is getting jobs based on his poor performance as a boyfriend and father to Chloe. I mean, it's wild to me.
Well, yeah, I mean, Chris has to be repping him at this point, right? If she's
Oh,
getting
it
him
has to
gigs.
be. And then I love Scott gets in. Like, finally, we're getting some Scott Disick. And Scott, Chris Jenner's like, Scott, would you like to be the Bachelor this season? Like, she could make one call to ABC, which also owns Hulu, and make
Right.
Scott Disick the Bachelor, which for me would be the best season of The Bachelor ever.
I would definitely watch that, but I feel like it would almost be like watching like Nick Vile's season, where it's like you're not ready for this. Like, you don't want to be like
By the way, if anybody's ready for a season of The Bachelor, there's issues. The only people that I think should be ready for The Bachelor are the people on The Golden Bachelor, which I have deeply fallen in love with. Are you watching?
I am watching, and it's so funny. I was gonna say that as you were like, the only people that should be on The Bachelor are, yes, people in their 60s and 70s who have lived life and know exactly what they want.
It's like people shouldn't be able to get a driver's license until they're 18. People shouldn't be able to be on The Bachelor until they're after like 65 years old. And then once you've loved and lost and loved or hope, like, that's the people that I want to see on these shows.
Yeah, and it's just so beautiful to watch. It's also so I think it's so inspiring to see that, you could find love at any age, and all the women are like mostly supportive of each other and seem to really like love each other, which
Except
is
for
like,
that Kathy, man. Kathy was woo.
He was like not having it, but you needed that. There needed to be some drama. But I couldn't believe the girl that went home, Joan, right? Because her daughter had a baby. I mean, like, that was my top pick. I was like, he's gonna pick her. They're like perfect for each other.
And you guys, it was so heartbreaking because he was like, he's so soft spoken. He's like, I completely understand. You've got to, but I'm like, why can't we just say, hey, let's pick this back up after the show? Like, why? I mean, listen, we don't have to follow ABC's guidelines. And also, the only thing that made me worry about Joan, just like the other lady this past week, her daughter was getting married. Like, why are you missing important events to go on The Golden Bachelor? That would almost make me go, wait a sec. You don't know me. Why are you here? Your daughter just had a baby and you're here? No, you go be with your daughter. Like, that's the whole point.
Like, also, you knew your daughter was pregnant when you went on to the mansion on the first night, right? Like, it's not like this just happened.
No, it really shocks me when I'm like, you gave that up for this. And I'm just so, but at the same time, I'm so thankful because none of them are like Instagram influencers yet.
Well, I don't know about you, but Joan came up on my For You page on TikTok, and she's like doing recipes and like doing all this influencer stuff. And so I don't know, it got me thinking. I'm like, are they setting her up to be the Golden Bachelorette?
They probably are going to do the Golden Bachelorette, aren't they?
Oh, they're definitely going to do the Golden Bachelorette, but I'm thinking maybe they're setting Joan up to do it because it's like she's the one that got away. There's like a great storyline there. And then obviously like Gary will come back and be like, he's like with this new girl now, or maybe if Gary doesn't find someone, he'll like come in and like put his hat in the ring. I really hope he doesn't do that for like the sake of him. But
I'm here to fight for the love of Joan. I realize that you're important. No, I just hope that they don't get so caught up in this that it takes away the initial innocence of this, even though that they're, older and they've, like, there's such an innocence to this. And we always talk about industry plants in terms of like recording artists, like, is Olivia Rodrigo an industry plant? Is Ice Spice?
Yes.
But I'm like, this Gary, is he an industry plant? Like, because he's so good looking at that age. He's so kind and he says everything with such heart. What's that? Oh, what'd you say? Oh, can you hear me? Did I lose you?
Yeah, you were frozen for a second.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
He's just
so good looking.
And he's so kind and he just takes everything. And I just think, what a great guy. But I'm like, is this guy real? Because it seems like, how did they knock it out of the park with this casting?
I think they just went to Indiana. My husband's from Indiana, and that's literally how everyone from Indiana is. They're just like so wholesome. I don't know what they put in the water there, but they're just like so wholesome and kind. I guarantee you they went to Indiana and they just like walked around and they're like, "You're a good looking man. Are you single?"
I mean, and by the way, if you look at old pictures of Gary, and I know I'm a straight dude, but like I can even recognize how handsome this man is. But if you look at old pictures, he's not nearly as handsome as he is at this age. Like 73 or 74 years old is Gary's year.
Yeah, and that's probably is what makes him such a perfect Golden Bachelor, because it's that whole concept of like you're really thriving like later in life and like second chances. So it's like just so perfect that they found him. But I don't know. He could be a plant.
I mean, that would be, I'm so curious what Gary's future is once you're on TV we've seen reality stars, we've seen the cast of Vanderpump Rules, what it's done to them. Like if Gary gets into some cheating scandal or something,
Oh
it would break
no.
my heart.
Also, I really hope they don't have like a golden bachelor in paradise because like I just
Oh,
they just like
could you imagine?
I stopped watch. I one there was one point in my life where I was watching The Bachelor, I was watching Bachelorette, and I was watching Bachelor in Paradise. But like the last couple of years, I'm like, I don't have the bandwidth to also watch Bachelor in Paradise. It's just so messy. It just makes me so sad for all of them. So yeah, if they did that with Golden Bachelor, I would be very sad.
And the Golden Bachelor, I keep saying this, it's only 1 hour. You only have to do 1 hour, not 2 hours like
I
they do
love
with all the
that.
other Bachelor iterations.
It's almost like they made it for senior citizens.
Well, they're like, you guys do not have long. We got to get this story in right now. But I don't know, for some reason, it completely works. And I love that the ratings are so good because I think that's what people want. They want something good. They want something that, like, I love watching people. I trust them that they know more about love because they've lived life.
And they know exactly what they want too. Like I feel like there's less games in a good way. I mean, it makes for that's probably why you know what that's why the shows are an hour because they have the hour of bullshit they don't have because
Yeah.
these people are so like focused on like what they want and what they need and also are confident in who they are. I feel like so many Bachelorette contestants really don't know who they are and their misleading lower thirds don't do anything to help them figure that out.
Yeah. I mean, to go back to what you do, you're not only the podcast Bad Influencer, but you are a prolific writer. I was reading a bunch of your articles. I mean, even the ones that you put out in the last week. I mean, you guys. I mean, like just this one I love ketamine in your sex drive. Can the depression treatment with ketamine and your sex drive? I actually read this. I was like, what is going on? Should I be on ketamine for depression right now? I was like fascinated.
Oh yeah, no. So that's with Giddy, which has been so great to write for them because everything that a lot of those articles almost feel like medical journals. My dad and my husband joke that it's like I have my PhD now for like writing all of these articles because I'm always interviewing medical professionals for this. But yeah, ketamine and depression. I was inspired to write this because I have two friends that have done it and have seen incredible, remarkable results from it. But there is an issue in terms of cost because it's very expensive and like not all health insurances cover it. But people have really had incredible, like transformative experiences. And it is connected to your sex drive because obviously if you are depression affects your sex drive. So if ketamine can help cure depression, it could also help your sex drive.
I mean, I would just, if it helped the depression, that would be great. I don't even care about the sex drive. My God. But, and this other one I love because you also write for Cosmopolitan, iconic magazine. But this is great. 75 cheesy pickup lines that are so bad, they're good. I love that title. You co-authored this one. But what are some horrible pickup lines? Because I'm sure even with your dating history, you have you've been around, you've seen the gamut of horrible pickup lines.
I've seen the gamuts. I actually reached out to social media for this, which was, I kind of definitely regret doing it. I posted it on my Facebook page out of all places. And all of these like
Facebook page. Wow. I'm glad Facebook is still being used. It's not just parents on there keeping up with the trends, but it's now pickup lines on Facebook. Amazing.
And the responses I got on Facebook were absolutely disgusting and revolting and made it feel like some people I was like, wait, like someone said something I didn't end up posting, which was something about like putting cream in your gravy or something. And I was like, what? And I was like, why would you even say that? And he's like, I'm sorry, you said pickup lines. Like that one actually worked for me. And I'm like, how?
There should be no pickup lines with the word cream in that. There should just no.
Yeah, no, and then some I made up like the whole like, are you into magic? Because after we have sex, I'll disappear. Like, you know, like this thing.
Oh my God.
And are you on your period? Because you're bloody beautiful.
Are you a supporter of Jesus? Because I have risen. Like I'm
Exactly,
workshopping things right now. I don't know.
There was like a lot in there, but it was fun to come up with those and to write them, and then also to kind of like back in my dating day, I really did have success using like a cheesy pickup line. Not a bad pickup line, but a cheesy pickup line I think is a great thing to do as an opener on dating apps when instead of, hey, you know, it'll get their attention, you'll get a response. And also you could use it in person. I used to have my favorite pickup line to use in person when I was dating at bars was always like, what's your girlfriend's name is what I would go to say up to a cute guy. And he would usually either he would get flustered and then I would know he was taken, or he would say, I don't have a girlfriend. And then he'd spend the rest of the night proving that he doesn't have a girlfriend. So you can take that. That's yours.
That's a free one, you guys.
That's
you
a
just have to
free
go
one.
listen to Bad Influencer and you can use that. No, I think, what do you think of the trend now of online, especially I see this on TikTok a lot, of pretty much screenshotting every dating app conversation, and it's usually in a negative light of making fun of the person on these apps that's like speaking to you or you're talking to. I see that a lot. And most of the time I'm like, okay, I get it. That guy is such a jerk. But sometimes I feel like bad because it's like these people are just out there potentially trying to meet somebody and now they're the subject of a TikTok video.
Yeah, and back when I was doing that, like I wasn't doing screen recordings of dating apps, but there was a time which led to the 30 dates in 3 days where I was like sharing about the dates I was going on, but I was always really cautious to protect the guy I was going on a date with by protecting his like identity and his name. And it was more about like how I was feeling about the situation. And we also see this trend of people spilling about their bad dates on TikTok, like the one about the girl who got 48 oysters on a date and the guy just left.
Oh my God. That's what I was going to bring up, the 48 oysters.
I watched her Did you watch her original TikTok?
Oh, wait, you cut out.
Oh,
Gabi.
am I? No.
Well, you cut out for a second. That's can you hear me now?
Yeah,
no, I was going to say I was going to bring up the 48 oysters. I just watched that TikTok video yesterday. I mean, this lady gets on a first date with this guy and she orders 48 oysters and then like hush puppies and stuff.
Okay, but you have to keep in mind the 48 oysters, it was a dozen oysters for $15. So she had only gotten 15 times 4, which is a number that I can't do off the top of my head because I didn't go to school for math. But like the way she says it is that it wasn't like she asked him, like he asked, it's kind of like she was going there anyway and she wanted to enjoy these oysters and he came because he wanted to get a drink with her. So like I do see the side of, okay, he should at the very least pay for the drink, which apparently he offered after he like offered a Venmo for the drink. But I also understand like, yeah, that's why first dates shouldn't be getting food. It should just be a coffee or a drink. But the video is insane because at first you think you're watching like one of those like come with me as I go to this restaurant video, but it's like actually her on the date and actually her eating all of this food and the guy like just bouncing, which I understand why he left.
Well, listen, this is actually a little bit, I have the clip of it.
This nigga been texting me for weeks talking to himself. Why I didn't block him, bitch, I don't know. But today I was bored and I had time, so he texted me like, can we meet for drinks? And I'm like, yeah, meet me here. They got the best fucking oysters in Atlanta, like hands down. So I'm like, yes, I can get some.
Okay, so that's a little bit of the clip of the actual 2.5 minute video where listen, oysters, if you were on a third date or a fourth, I think oysters, not like I'm all down for eating 48 oysters. I'm down for a good bargain, but that's a very intense food to eat 48 of in somebody else's presence that you just are meeting for the first time. And on top of that, you're filming all of this for a TikTok video. She's getting angles of all of the. Could you imagine going on a date and watching somebody create a TikTok video in front of you? I'm sorry. Like I'm all for eating. I'm all for a good bargain, but I know what this guy must have been scared out of his mind.
Yeah. So are we sure that he left because of the oysters or did he leave because she was an influencer?
I mean, she's a bad influencer. You need to get her for the second season. I just think it was such a funny, it was so funny to me, but I just can't imagine watching somebody, because it didn't look like she was sharing the oysters either.
No, she wasn't. They were all for her.
And she was like putting hot sauce in each one and she was like, oh shit, this is good. And I would just imagine like all of the oysters and the drinks, and then she orders a full hush puppy meal and then the guy just bounces, which is not right. But I can only imagine he was like, what the F is going on?
Well, and also because she's filming it, he probably thought it was a prank, but I guess it wasn't. I guess that this was just what she wanted to do, which I will say is kind of good. Like you do want to spend your dates also don't go on a date. Like maybe that should have just been a thing that she did on her own time, right? Because like if you can just enjoy your own company by yourself, why would you want to bring a stranger that you met on a dating app? But it's also funny that he was having conversations to himself. And so it almost feels like maybe she did this because she was annoyed with him, like bugging her. And he's like, oh, you want to meet me? Okay, come meet me. This is what I do. Like it kind of almost feels like she was doing it to kind of like get revenge for him like blowing up her phone. Like,
I'm gonna put most of the C in my stomach during our date and see how you respond to this much fish this going into my body. I mean, it really is wild. You guys got to check out that video. I was thinking about you when I was watching it because I was like, oh my god, this would be a great 21st date aspect of this. As we start winding down here a little bit, is there any other pop culture stories right now, or who are your favorite pop culture figures that you always look forward to a new story? And are you going to be reading or listening to Britney Spears' book this week?
oh, I can't. Okay, so I definitely will be listening to. I can't wait to listen to Celebrity Memoir Book Club. I know they're already reading it, and they're gonna do their recap, and I love listening to them. And I also want to hear. I think they're gonna say read the book, but oftentimes I'll listen to them and then I'll go read the book after.
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to reading the book. Everything I've heard, I agree with. I've hated Justin Timberlake for years, and now I finally feel like everyone else is like seeing my side of the story. I'm so sorry she went through everything that she went through. I mean, I think we already knew, obviously, that she had been through so much. But I'm happy that she's telling her story on her terms. But I don't know if I mean, but then there's also like, I am on the side of TikTok with the conspiracy theories about her. And I don't know if you want to get into that, but that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is this on her terms? That's what my question is this her story on her terms? That's what I get worried about. Is like, are we getting the actual real story, and how aware is Britney of all of this? Because she deactivated her Instagram over the weekend, then she reactivated it. She also said, these are stories from my past, y'all. I've moved on. I'm great. I'm like, then maybe why did you write the book? I mean, if you wanted to move on, like I get worried about Britney because I just feel like we always get 70% of the story.
Same. And also, I'm a little concerned that she's not doing any TV appearances. I feel like I want to, like, and also how we never get any clear photos of her when she's taken by the paparazzi. And she's usually wearing those like white sunglasses that almost like deflect the light, kind of like Paris Hilton's scarf that she had from back in the day that would kind of reflect the light from paparazzis. So, I mean, I've seen a lot of theories. I don't know which is true and what is not true. My wish for Britney is that wherever she is happy and she's thriving. Like, who knows? Maybe Britney was like, you can take over the Britney Spears like name and do whatever you want with it, release the books, whatever, run the Instagram account. Like, I'm going to Cabo and like, or I'm going to Hawaii and like, peace. Like, who knows?
So this is potentially, we're dealing with AI Britney right now. This is AI Britney.
Doesn't it feel like it though? From her post, from like with the captions in the post, from also how like, you know how you could do face filters? Like, I feel like how all of her videos, even her wedding photos, even the cover of People, like we haven't seen a clear photo of Britney since 2016. Like since her residency, that's like the last time we've actually seen like a clear photo of Britney Spears. And so I think it would be very easy to like take her name and likeness, and maybe she is like the
you
first.
froze up.
Oh,
You just froze up for a second. Take that back.
I think it would be really easy to take her name and likeness and continue it. And like, maybe that really is like what maybe that was what they agreed on with the conservatorship, where she's like, I don't want to perform anymore. I don't want to be a public figure anymore. You can take everything from my life so far and run with it, but I'm going to take my money and go like live my life elsewhere. Like, who knows?
I mean, but why is this all going down in books now? I mean, we got the Jada Pinkett Smith, we got the Britney Spears, couldn't we spread this out a little bit? But I was thinking about that listening to Perez Hilton on your show, is that like, isn't it like, I mean, we grew up in a day where Perez was one of the people making fun of Britney. I mean, we all kind of added to what we see now, you know, what it added to in her life. And now with pop culture, you know, like we've seen this for 20 years. We have such ownership over Britney Spears' story, and we were there for the Timberlake. We were there. So it's interesting to get some version of her truth now. And then I'm like, oh my God, does Justin have to write a book and respond? Like, are we just only going to get, is this like how rappers used to do like raps against each other? We're now just responding in memoir form.
Who knows? But also, you know, there's so much money in books. Unfortunately, not for authors like me who aren't famous. But if you are famous, there's a lot of money in books. You make a ton of money. And also, it's the IP. Like we saw with Jessica Simpson's book, like she released her book. It did very well because of the pandemic. She made a lot of money off of the book. And then she's adapting it into a movie or a TV show. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Britney's book also gets adapted into that movie. I know there's been talks about a movie about her life. But now if this book is on her terms and is she's approved of it, I could see them easily taking that book and turning it into a movie or a TV show. I bet you they're already discussing that right now.
Well, I mean, Paris Hilton just sold her book, I Am Paris, I believe, A24, which is one of my favorite production companies. They bought that book and they're making it into a series.
Yeah.
And I thought, how incredible. But it is interesting. If you really, all you people that have been following pop culture for the last 2 decades, we are now seeing the fruits of our viewing and reading labor because we get to see this other side of it. We get to see all these figures we followed around, the other side of this. I mean, Lindsay Lohan became a mom this past year, for the love of God.
I'm so happy about that. There was also a funny video of her reading her favorite Mean Girls lines, and then also like how many lines she wanted. There was a line where she wanted to fix like the whole, oh, we don't try Sears. She's like, can we say something funnier than Sears? And they're like, that's the line.
I mean, and by the way, you guys know they're doing a Super Bowl commercial of the cast of Mean Girls, so that will actually be amazing to see. But I always think about that in terms of these Britneys and Lindsays and Parises, is that we won't see stars like that anymore in a certain way because everybody's a star now, because social media has given us all the opportunity to have our little slice, our little 15 minutes of fame, as Andy Warhol would say. And just like movie stars, like even the Brad Pitt and the Angelina Jolies, we don't really, because there is so much, movie stars really just don't exist. I mean, DiCaprio is potentially one of the last, and he's 45, 46 years old now. I mean, it truly is wild, but I mean, it is an era that is kind of, gone. And we of course have this new era of pop culture, which comes at us 24/7, a mile a minute, deux moi, all that stuff. But it is interesting to see where it could possibly go. And, how does that affect us, the audience?
I mean, it's kind of sad, yeah, like that we've missed that we as millennials are lucky because we got to see the golden era of, or like maybe the last celebrities, really, in a way. Like we got to see that last celebrity experience. And yeah, you're right. Now with social media and reality TV, it's like anyone could be a celebrity, and they are so few of those like big Hollywood stars. Although I would argue that like Taylor Swift might be also one of the last in terms of like musicians, because her career has spanned so long and she's been involved in so many scandals or, headlines. So I wouldn't be surprised if Taylor Swift releases a book, definitely will release a book at some point in her life telling her side of the story and like what really happened with everyone, all the guys she dated, maybe.
Taylor's interesting though, just because she hasn't had, she's dated a lot of men, but she hasn't had a controversial thing like a Lindsay Lohan or a Britney Spears, I feel like that's, what's that?
It's Pete Davidson is the most controversial.
Yes.
And
Okay.
Did you hear that Lindsay's publicist, who was with her when she was dealing with all of those when she got her license, kept going to jail, all that stuff? Apparently the publicist that was with Lindsay was working with Pete, but dropped Pete because he keeps on getting into like too many scandals and it's like too much for her.
She's
and like
having flashbacks of Lindsay. She's like, I can't keep doing this. It's bad for me. But you're right. Like in terms of that, we do have the Petes, we do have the Taylors, we have the Beyonce. It is interesting. You're right. Now I need to rethink my whole.
I think Uber really fixed celebrities getting into car accidents, unless you're Pete Davidson and feel like it's still necessary to speed your car through a house in Beverly Hills.
Do you know? Like that's what I'm saying. Like you know how easy it is to take an Uber or a Lyft. Do you know how convenient it is? This isn't a plug, but I'm like, it shocks me that celebrities want to still how do they have such little control of their life? They're like, I need to drive. I need to have control.
I think that's what it is. It's a freedom thing. They associate being able to drive your own car as like a freedom thing, but also like be respectful of other people on the road. And if you're angry or you've been drinking or whatever, like call a car. And also celebrities have always had access to town cars. They have drivers at their disposal. So why are they like, making it difficult for other people and being reckless? It's like really, there's a lot of celebrities who have killed people in cars and have gotten away with it. Matthew Broderick.
People don't realize that story. Matthew Broderick, way back in the day in the 80s, he was overseas. And, there was an accident where a person died, unfortunately. And he said he passed out. He said he doesn't even remember what happened. And not a lot of people know about that story. It's been so long. But yeah, that is a true story.
And I think Caitlyn Jenner also, and I'm sure there's more that we don't.
Yeah, baby. I'm on the Malibu Highway.
So I don't know.
What a great way to end it, talking about celebrity car accidents. No, guys, the podcast, Bad Influencer, all 9 episodes, you can download now. Listen to your leisure, binge it all at once. You got Dodie in there. Did she give you any Vanderpump Rules tea? Did she throw any?
I'm not on the show a little bit. There's a little mention, but I went on her podcast and we talked about the episode I was on and what was really happening behind the scenes. The one with the dick pic, which was like Jax's dick pic.
The stand-up show or the sketch comedy show. Yeah.
So go if you want that tea, it's on her podcast and you can listen to my episode on her podcast, Love, Sex, and What Else Matters.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But you guys, I highly recommend this. Gabi's amazing. Go, just type in Gabi Conti online. Go read her articles. I'll put her Instagram in there as well. Let's get Bad Influencer a season 2. Thank you so much for coming back. I truly appreciate it. And please let me audition for your next one.
You don't even have to audition, Ryan. It's already done. If we get a season 2, I want you on the show. I'm on record now saying it. Okay, we're gonna make it happen.
God. That's, by the way, this podcast doesn't even exist. It's just a way for me to try to get other work. Like that. This is not even a real show. So, but Gabi, you are the best. I always am a strong supporter of everything that you do, and you guys should be a supporter too. So hopefully, if you don't know her, you know her now, and go support. Check out Bad Influencer.
Thank you so much, Ryan. You're the best. I love this show.